Yo, gotcha.
Yo!
Awesome.
Yeah!
That was
Success!
painful.
I've never done a Facebook
Haven't
Live
you?
before, so I'm gonna take 70% of
No,
the
no, no, no,
mistake
no,
credit
no.
right
Don't worry.
there.
I've done this like I don't know, at least 5 times before, so I should know the stuff by now. So I'm sorry if that was painful.
Oh no, it's fine. No worries at
How are
all. Happy
you?
to be here. I'm great, thanks. How are
Pretty good.
you? It's
It's
cold there.
freezing, yeah. It's like one
Oh
degree. Although the
no.
sun's shining outside, which is beautiful, but it's like 1 degree. It's pretty nippy. Hence this big woolly jersey I'm wearing. We've got the fire going, but it's not really helping.
Yay, New Zealand. Yeah, it's pretty hot here
Yeah.
in
So
LA.
whereabouts in
We're finally getting
whereabouts in LA are
summer,
you?
so just in the suburbs. Glendale
Is that like
is the name of the
all I
suburb.
know is where the
Yeah.
airport is basically, and like north of it. Are you whereabouts in relation to theirs?
And you pretty much don't ever live
No.
near the airport because that area is not so great. So, yeah, I'm about mm, 70K from the
That's a long way
airport,
away. That's
which is
almost out of
not,
town, surely.
yeah, it's not no, LA is huge. LA is pretty enormous. So, yeah, no, still in town.
Cool. Well, I was there about a month ago. I went to a conference in Temecula, which is sort of halfway towards San Diego, I think. Right?
Yeah, that's
Is it?
far.
Right.
Talk about far. That's really
Yeah.
far.
No, it
Yeah.
was cool. It was cool. It was. I'd never been there before, so it was nice to go and see somewhere different. It was cool.
Yeah, absolutely. That's great. Yeah, I love New Zealand. I lived in Australia actually for five
Whereabouts?
years. So I started in Brisbane and then I lived in
Where the
Dalby.
heck is that?
Exactly. It's in the middle of
Why?
nowhere.
Why?
Yeah, I I was dating an Aussie at the time and we started a construction
Wow.
company and which was his profession, and that was where the work was. So we lived in the middle of nowhere. Very little work-life
No.
balance. Not a good place to live. I don't
Yeah.
recommend it.
No. It's those some of those places in the middle of Aussie can be pretty remote, right? Very remote. Like
Uh-huh.
one horse
Yeah,
town
yeah,
sort of
not
thing.
so great. Pretty much. Yep. I think like with with the like construction boom, there was 12,000 people, and that was like with
And then
the
the boom
boom.
ended. Right.
So, and then the boom ended and everyone left.
Hey, hey,
So
well,
yeah.
listen, thanks for coming on. I really appreciate it. And I'm just going to give you a
Yeah,
little,
of
like, I'm just
course.
going
No
to, for
worries
those
at
who are
all.
watching either now or later on, just give you a bit of an intro, well, intro you. So
Yeah,
I
cool.
have come to know Deb in the last just few weeks through Instagram, which is a channel I've only just really started using myself. And
Mm,
she's based in LA, and she is an actor. She's a writer. She's a producer. But she's also got an amazing resource for folks with mental health challenges called More Than You See. And I wanted to talk about all of the above if we've got time, um, Deb, today.
yeah,
So,
sure.
so yeah, give me a little bit about your background. Are you from LA originally, or
Yeah, so I'm from LA originally. I went to Berkeley, which is a California school near San Francisco for
yeah,
my undergrad in English
yeah,
Lit and Theater. And then I moved to Australia to get my master's in film
yeah,
production. And then, like I just said, I met my ex and who's an Aussie, and we started a construction company together. And I thought that that was what was going to make me happy because I mean, I love traveling, so like that was all great, but I was earning really good money, and I was like, this is what's going to make me happy is just earning really good money and have my boyfriend, and that's all I
yeah,
need in life, right? And actually, after living in Australia for about 5 years, I started having some very strange health issues, which I now know was like a pretty much 6 month panic attack. My body just like completely shut down, was not happy with the life that I was living. And after going to lots of doctors and them not knowing what was wrong, I decided like, okay, well, I'm just going to take a break from construction and go back to acting because I really missed it. And moved back to LA. He came with me for a couple years, and I've been back now in LA for about 5.5 years, and haven't
So
looked
just
back.
going back one step, when you said the 6 month panic attack, what
Yeah.
did that look like? When I mean,
Hmm.
you mean you're having panic attacks regularly for
Yeah.
six
So I
months,
mean,
or
no. So it's crazy because it didn't manifest like a normal panic attack. I was having like neurological uh, reactions to things. So my I would have like hot and cold nerve damage, like tingles going up and down my body. Yeah, I would like feel like my limbs were on fire. I thought that I had like early onset MS was what I originally thought. Like my brain, I would like wouldn't remember. We have at the time we had 8 employees, and I wouldn't remember people's names, and these are people that I would work with every day. And so I was like having insane brain fog. And I went to doctors, and they, took all sorts of CAT scans and all sorts of stuff, and they had no idea what it was. And it wasn't actually until I read, I believe it was an article with Tim Ferriss, like years later, a couple years ago, and he was talking about how when you're not doing what you really want to do, your body can, create these like physical responses to tell you like, hey, snap out of it. What you're doing is not making you
right?
happy. And so now I just firmly believe that that is what was
And
going
that
on
was a
there.
6 month thing, though.
Yeah.
That must have been pretty
Hmm.
challenging.
Yeah, it was pretty crazy.
But then you
Gotta
decided to
say.
pull the pin for one reason or another. Well, obviously, as a result of that particular experience, you decided to move back to the US and
Yeah.
get back into your acting. And that was
Yeah.
5 years
Hmm.
ago, 5.5 years ago.
Yep.
So what? That's
Yep.
awesome. So what
Hmm.
does your acting career look like since then? What have you been doing for 5 years?
Yeah. So I was very lucky in the fact that I mean, I love meeting people. I'm like a huge people person. Love to just go to stuff. I'm actually going to a friend's party after this. And I immediately found a great group of friends. And so I started producing
Yeah.
films right away. Within the first 6 months that I was there, I was starting to produce a feature. And now, in the 5 years that I've been in LA, I've produced four
Wow.
features, two of which are complete and have distribution, and two of which are in final stages of post, which is like really actually quite unbelievable.
That's
Like
amazing.
that sort of track record in LA is like a little unheard of. So I started really getting into producing as well, and so a lot of the stuff that I've done, I'll like star in movies and then produce them as well. And I haven't tackled television yet, and that's my next thing, which is sort of funny because that was sort of the way that it used to be. Like you do TV first and then you
Yeah.
do film, and I've done it the complete opposite. And so I'm now just that's my focus is focusing on television.
Wow. That's
So
amazing.
yeah,
And you're
yeah,
enjoying it?
thanks. I do. I really do. I have to say, like, I just finished a feature in Portland this summer that starred Anna Camp from like the Pitch Perfect and True Blood, like that show. Joe Latriglio, who's on Brooklyn Nine-Nine, and Stephen Strait, who's on The Expanse, which is a sci-fi show. So we had like three name actors. Really important film. It's about a woman who has terminal cancer and returns back home to Oregon to use doctor assisted
Mm.
dying because in Oregon that is an option. And the author of that, the screenwriter for that, he's a surgeon himself, and he's always been really fascinated with this topic. And so he wrote this. This is the first thing that he'd ever written, and it's a really wonderful script. We just did a really great job. The actors were incredible, and so that we're just shopping around right now. But it was interesting. I shot that this past summer, and it was like the first film that I hadn't had a really large acting role in, and I really missed it. So that's sort of where I was like, okay, I need to like put some attention back on myself and really go after the things that I want to go after, which honestly is also part of the reason why I created this organization that I did, is that I think I myself am someone who I get so caught up in helping other people that I really find it difficult to focus on the things that make me happy, and that can really harm yourself. And so I really found that like over the past year, I went through some pretty difficult personal stuff, and I just kept putting on a happy face, kept pushing through, kept being like, I'm fine, I got this. I can like do anything. I'm Wonder Woman. Like my friends call me Wonder Woman, and like that's who I was. And then it got to a point where I was just couldn't get out of bed because I was just so crippled with dealing with my own emotions because I wasn't actually dealing with them. And that's where I was really like, okay, Deborah, you need to stop. You need to take a break. And I started going up for hikes every morning, started listening to a bunch of podcasts, which I'm obsessed with. And when I was listening to one of these podcasts, it gave me the idea for this organization. And yeah, I mean, it launched May 20th,
Dude, that was
and
only like 3 weeks ago.
I know, and it's going so well. It's just so amazing. I'm really, really happy, and it's helping so many people, which, that's my favorite thing
Yeah.
in the world.
No,
So,
it's got a, the vibe you're running with is kind of similar to what I'm trying to do with the Be Here Now thing. Just trying to create a resource and a safe place
yeah,
and inspiration and hope for people who are struggling. Like, it sounds like you have, and definitely I
yeah.
have. Um, I
Mm-hmm.
just wanted to touch on two things. One, Portland. I just was in Portland again a month ago, and what
Yeah.
a beautiful place that is in the summer, right?
Oh, crazy.
Beautiful place,
Yeah, I love it.
stunning.
Yep.
And what an interesting
Yeah.
story, right? Like, so
Mm-hmm.
is Oregon the only state in the US where they have, is it euthanasia or is it just is it doctor assisted? What is that?
No, so they call it doctor
Right,
assisted dying. And it isn't the only state. I believe there's 12 states that it's currently legal. But according to the last census, 72% of the US thinks that it should be an
right,
option, but only 12 states actually
right,
allow it. So, and it's something like we're working with an organization, like there's a Death with Dignity organization in Oregon, and there's also an organization called Compassion and Choices, and we're working with them to like, really try and use our own social media channels. Anna is going to be on the cover of their magazine, and stuff like that to really just like spread awareness around it because it's just not a subject matter that's really been discussed
no,
very much, and it really should be something that is an
yeah.
option for
And
people.
fingers
So
crossed, the production
yeah.
you've just finished will help give that some exposure, right? Which is
Yeah.
awesome.
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
so tell me a little bit more about more than you see, like because like you say, you just launched it 3 weeks
Yeah.
ago. Um,
Mhm.
I've been through it a number of times. I love the layout. I love how you've got the different resources available for folks to explore. Um,
Thank
what,
you.
where do you see that? Like, how are you building that? How are you building that out? How are you
Yeah.
promoting it apart from chatting to people like me?
So yeah, so like the reason behind it, or like where I sort of got the idea was like I said before, I'm obsessed with podcasts. There's so many podcasts that I love. And it was interesting because I was talking to a really good friend of mine, and I was telling her something that I had gotten from one of these podcasts. And I was like, you have to listen to it. It's so good. And she went and listened to it, and she was like, yeah, no, that was good, but I got the same perspective from this one book. And it was just a really good reminder that we all learn in very different ways, and we all have very different things that, really
Yeah,
resonate with us. And so I really wanted to create a website that was one place where you have a bunch of different
yeah,
catalysts. So people can come on there and go, okay, I'm an auditory learner. I drive a lot. I love podcasts. Great. Here's, 15 different episodes that all deal with depression across a ton of different podcasts. Um, and if I love books, then like, great, here's books. If you love articles, there's articles and videos. Like, I really wanted it to be like, I, I basically say I want it to be a toolkit where you're just starting to, put different things in your toolkit that you can go back to in the future. And like, if you're feeling really, you know, down or anxious or whatever, you can go, okay, I remember I listened to that one podcast. That was really great. Let's see if that, person is also spoke on something else. Like maybe there'll be something else that will resonate. Um, and so one thing I try to make it just as easy as possible for anyone who goes to the website. So everything is tagged. So it's like, I'm feeling anxious. Okay, great. Here's a book and 3 articles and some podcasts and an organization that all
Love
deals with
it.
anxiety. And it's, yeah, or it's like, yeah, I just want to look at books today. Then you can just look at books. And then the Instagram side of it, Instagram is such an amazing platform. Um, but of course, with social media, we have so many people like suicide rate and mental health is going through the roof as far as like the amount of depression and stuff that's increasing. And they are attributing it a lot to stuff like
Absolutely.
Instagram because we are, creating these false communities and these false friendships. And so not only do people put on, faces for other people, but you're also like creating these false connections with people. And I mean, especially as an actor, I found, like I said, that over time, just like past year, I had a lot of friends who had no idea that I was going through stuff because I am a very positive, upbeat person. And so people just kept seeing that positive, upbeat self, and they had no idea what was actually going on. And that can be quite damaging, both to myself, but also to other people, because then other people don't feel like they can confide in me because they're like, oh my gosh, Deborah's got everything sorted. Like she has no problems in the world, which was completely not true. And so the point of the Instagram campaign is to show 2 pictures of yourself. One picture that is, your external happy self or whatever sort of mask that you put on for the world. It could be, like you're a warrior and you're always strong or whatever, or you're just really happy and bubbly. And then the second photo is how you're actually feeling, whether you're feeling anxious or depressed or sad or, whatever. And we put those 2 pictures next to each other. So they're juxtaposed so people can see really the external self and the internal self and how different they can be. And then people will attach a story to those 2 photos to sort of explain something that they've gone through or whatever they want to share with the community. And that's where I really there's a lot of support out there for people who have clinical diagnoses. So it's like if you're clinically depressed or you have clinical OCD or like something like that. But I think that there's a lot of gray area
Absolutely.
and there's a lot of middle ground for people who are just like, hey, I'm human and I feel shitty and I don't know how to get out of this feeling. And so I really wanted to, build a place so people could go and share stories where it's like, I don't feel great all the time and I don't know what to do with that feeling. And that's where, like all of the resources on the website as well they're not, slap you in the face with like, let's get through your mental health. Like that's not what it is. It's about like, hey, let's listen to this really interesting podcast with Zachary Levi, who is, an actor. He was just in Shazam. He was in Chuck. He was, he's a really famous actor here in the States. And he talks about very openly, very vulnerably about his struggle with depression and suicidal thoughts and how he had lacked purpose in life. And I just think that is something that really touched me to hear him talk about his struggles. And I think that, those sorts of things, like we never know what's going to help, be that catalyst to pull us out of the darkness. And so I really am building a platform for just like those little itty bitty catalysts that might help someone in the
Yeah.
future.
No.
And to answer your last question about how I'm like spreading the word is I originally just like sent an email out to all of my friends and was like, hey, who wants to share a story? And then from here on out, I have just been, I have been on podcasts. I spoke on a panel the other night. Like it really is catching on in an incredible way. I think people in the entertainment industry want to talk about this more and more. So there's a lot of, there's really a hunger for
Yeah.
that. And I'm really, like I read people's stories on other platforms and I reach out to them and I say like, hey, I'd be so honored to repost this on More Than You See, and would you be interested in that and whatever. So I'm just really trying to like build a community slowly, person by person, just like give people a
No, it's super
platform.
cool. And thank you for allowing me to share my story.
Thanks.
It was really nice.
Oh my gosh, thank you. Thank you for
Yeah, no, it's
doing
super
that.
cool. Um, and just going back, no, actually, I'll start again. That sharing the stories thing is so
Yeah.
powerful because um, people can relate. One is when you listen to people's stories. Quite often, there are vast similarities between them. You know, if someone's gone into a,
Hmm.
just been into a deep hole, it's generally like it's not just one thing that's happened. It's generally a bunch of different stuff. You know, with
Right.
me, it was losing my mum. It was and not grieving properly. It was being like low level angst from being in a relationship I didn't really want to be in for a long time. It was low level angst
Yeah.
with starting a new business. It was a bunch of different stuff that came
Right.
together. And then when a particular trigger happened and losing a very short, very shallow relationship, that was just a trigger that broke the camel's back. Um, and so people
Right.
can, when they listen to that kind of story, they can, to my mind, what I'm hoping is that they can look at their own lives and think, crikey, I've actually got a whole load of stresses going on right now. I'm not in a hole right now, but if I don't do something about one or two or more of them, then there's a good chance that I could not so much lose it, but
Yep.
I need to address some of these things. Um,
Right. 100%.
so yeah, so I think what you're doing is really awesome. And that's what I'm trying to do by talking to people like you is getting others to share their stories too. So it's super visible. So
Yeah.
thank you.
Hmm. Yeah.
And
Thank
with
you. Yeah. I think it's,
and I was just gonna say
yeah, go ahead.
with your when you were in your dark place, what did that look like for you? You know, you said you went out hiking and things like that to try and get out of it. But prior to that point in time, when you had this mask on when you're at work, when you came home from work, like
Mm.
how was your that darkness manifesting? Was it just despairing? Was it you didn't want to get out of bed? How was it? What did it look like for you that place?
Yeah. I mean, for me, I went through a really painful breakup, and I didn't deal with it for
Right.
a year. Um, I had a business partner at the time who was like, definitely like a just push through it, you'll be fine. Like, just keep working harder and harder and harder. And I definitely did that and totally ran myself into the ground. And it wasn't until actually in March, so right before I launched the site, that I had a really good friend in Australia
Mm.
pass away. Complete super suddenly. He died of a heart
Yeah.
attack. 33, perfect health, just the most perfect man in the world, with just like a real, it just makes me really sad that he's not in the world anymore. And going back to Australia and going to his funeral completely
Yeah.
broke me. And I did not know how to function after that. After, seeing someone so wonderful not in the world anymore. And it just made me really, that was the first time I felt very angry after I'd been through this breakup. And I have a really adorable dog, and he was the only reason I was getting out of bed in the morning was to walk
Yeah.
him. Um, but besides that, I was just like, I really had lost, um, like as an actor, it's really hard because we don't have, a set schedule every day. There isn't anyone who is forcing me out of bed. I don't have a boss calling me and being like, "Why aren't you at work?" And so that is really hard, and that's why I think it's such a big issue in the entertainment industry. Is like no one is checking
Yeah.
in on you, and so and there's no reason to get out of bed because you unless you actually have a job. But in order to have that job, you have to put in a lot of work in order to get that job. And so it becomes this never ending cycle of just hopelessness and like lack of purpose. And I really just didn't, really have a desire to work. And like I am a workaholic, and I say that with some guilt because I don't think that that necessarily is the best way to live my life. And I am working really hard to try and change that some. But that was completely gone, and I honestly didn't even recognize myself anymore. And I really felt that like myself as a person, I'm very strong, and I know that I have a lot of people around me who support me and love me and who would be devastated if I wasn't here in this world. just like all of, these people were so upset about Al. And I just thought, like, I have a lot of foresight and a lot of mental strength to know that if I hurt myself in some way to make myself not be here, that would be really, really sad. But I know that there is a lot of people out there who are in a dark place for longer, or who are in a deeper hole than I
Mm,
was in, and don't have that foresight and don't have the ability to see the big picture and understand that things are going to get
yeah,
better. And that honestly really scared me to just think about, like, how that I mean, I had a friend in high school who tried to commit suicide, and I went and visited him at the hospital afterwards and stuff. And it's becoming more and more of an issue because people are feeling more and more alone, and that it just breaks my heart. Like, I just don't want anyone to feel like they're alone.
yeah, no, absolutely. And one of the other reasons for having these sort of conversations is to show folks that there are people like you and I who have been into some pretty deep, dark places who
Yeah,
have managed to come out the other side. And to hear those stories of
right,
recovery can also be helpful for someone who's in a dark place. So, I'm feeling pretty fucking bad right now, but look,
right.
that guy was in a worse situation than I was.
Mm,
He's now okay. There's some hope for me. So yeah,
yeah,
that's the other flip side of sharing as well. Um, yeah,
100%.
dude, that's been amazing. Thank you so much. I don't want to take up too much more of your time, Deb, but that
Yeah,
was really,
no,
really
that's
helpful
okay.
to have that conversation.
Yeah, I mean, I think what you're doing is really incredible. I think, you briefly touched on it before, but like one of the most important things is to really have some sort of routine in your life that is focused on mental health. And that is just something that no one really, like, we're not taught to put focus
No,
on that. And it's not something that we really put any real importance behind, and that's very damaging, I think. I recently read a book that was basically talking about high-end athletes, so like Olympic and like people in the NFL and all of these, like, the people who are at top of their game, and how their training schedules are broken down both into training but also into recovery, because they cannot recover, or they cannot perform at their optimal best unless they do recover, and how, like, that is equally important, if not more important, than the training that they put in. And that's something I've really tried to remind myself, that that is just as important. And I think that that's where, groups like yours and what you're trying to do with really mindfulness and like focusing on taking a break is so, so important, because it is something that, like, I do truly believe that they say, like, if you don't think you have time to meditate, then you're the person who should meditate. I fully believe that, but I
absolutely.
also I also think that, like, we can often think like, okay, so I need to meditate, which means I need to, like, put on an app or like go in a beautiful place or like whatever for like 15 minutes and like set aside this time and whatever. And while that can be work for some people, it doesn't work for everyone. And I think the biggest thing for me is I'm just like, figure out what works for you. Because I know for me personally, going hiking in the morning, 30 minutes of hiking, for me, that's my
Absolutely.
meditation. And that's what works for
Absolutely.
me, and it's just like, whatever is your thing that's going to make you feel better and is going to, like, give you, more strength and clarity of spirits in your life, is
Yeah,
that's
you don't
just
have
the
to be in a
best.
lotus position meditating to be meditating, right? You can be doing it. You can be doing.
Yeah,
You can be doing a
right,
walking meditation
exactly.
up a hill like you do, right?
Right. Yeah,
Um,
exactly. It's
yeah, that's
wonderful.
cool. I'm actually going to be doing some Facebook Lives over the next few weeks about little mindfulness practices that people can use every day, and like just little mindfulness
That's
practices.
awesome.
Just for me, it's a little mini meditation, right? It could be just
Yep.
sitting, drinking a cup of
Yep.
coffee, and just focusing for that minute on drinking that coffee, and that's it. Taste it, smell it,
Yep.
sense it. That's a mini meditation, and that's the kind of little break you
That's
need,
awesome.
just 4 or 5 times a day. It'll get you on the right path, right?
Right. Ah, I'm excited. I
Yeah.
want to watch those.
So I'm going to be
That
putting
sounds
this out
great.
shortly. So yeah, keep an eye out. But so do thank you so much. We're going to put
I will.
in the comments and in
Yeah,
the
of
description.
course.
I'll put in the link to your pages and yeah. If I
Awesome.
can do anything else to help promote what you're doing, then please let me know. I'm going to create a podcast out of this if that's cool with
Thank
you.
you.
Um,
Yeah,
and have that
absolutely.
out there as well. So this will be a video as well as a podcast and possibly even a transcript. We'll just see.
Yeah, absolutely. And if, anyone in your community wants to contribute a story, I'd, be more than honored. It really is whatever you want it to be, is what the story is. So it really can be however it manifests in themselves. I just love sharing people's stories, so I
Thanks, Deb. That's
appreciate it.
amazing. Thank you so much. We'll talk.
Thank you. Have a wonderful day. I'm
Back
so
at
glad
you.
this
We'll see you
worked.
soon. Take care. Lots of love.
Sounds good.
Bye.
Okay.